All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Again, welcome here to ArcGIS Urban, the road ahead. My name is Gabriela Coverdale, and I'm one of the customer success managers here at Cityworks, and welcome to Innovate 2021. Thank you for attending our conference and this session. I wish we were meeting in person. I really do miss that, but we're doing our best to try to connect, even if it's virtually. I want to introduce you today to Dan Purling. He's our subject matter expert for PLL and Public Access Portal. We have with us also Carl Alexander, who is our GIS subject matter expert. We have Ashlyn Freeman. She is our customer success manager. And we have Wesley, who is our technical support. You don't see him on the screen, but he's handling the back end to make sure everything is working properly. If you have any questions, you can enter them in the question section on the left of your screen. And at the end of the presentation, we will go ahead and answer as many questions as we can. Whatever questions we don't get a chance to answer, don't worry, we will go ahead and send them to you via email at the end of the conference. If you can hear us all, if there's any issues with audio or video or anything like that, please send us the message on the question section so that we can handle that as soon as possible. If there are no questions or any logistic issues, we'll go ahead and get started. Dan, pass it on to you.
Great, thank you, Gabriela. And thanks everybody for attending. This session is going to look at ArcGIS Urban, the road ahead, and some integration plans that we have, and excitingly, an actual video kind of showing the first step of this process that we've been working pretty diligently on here. So before we get started, you know, we might get sick of this by the end of today and tomorrow, but I do want to have our safe harbor statement. This is for the applications that I work with. This is about as bleeding edge as it gets. We are actively working on this functionality, including additional code, API calls, webhooks, working with the Urban team in their GraphQL API environment. So this is pretty not committed, I should say, yet, but it is something we're working towards. So just don't include this in any purchasing decisions and standard safe harbor stuff. Now, I do want to just kind of have a brief overview of a few pieces of functionality within the ArcGIS Urban application that we specifically kind of honed in on. Now, this is by no means a total overview of the Urban application. It's really robust. I know that Kara, who I think is in the audience right now, and Liz too, but all three of us from Cityworks went to a training about a year and a half ago, and we're just blown away by the capabilities of Urban in general. So if you want a more full look, definitely reach out to your Esri rep or reach out to one of us, and we can put you in touch with them to get a more full look. But for today's session, two of the pieces that I just grabbed from the Urban website tie in directly to what we're talking about. And one is the ability to design 3D scenarios like we see in this screenshot. And we can kind of see a purple building there that's been generated within the Urban interface. And that's kind of what we're looking at from an analysis perspective. Okay, how does this proposed building fit within the space? Is it the correct use type? Does it meet any height restrictions, setback restrictions, and kind of analyzing from a 3D perspective what we can all do within this particular space and for this particular building, which is a really, really critical part of the review process, which is where we see some ties with Cityworks PLL that we'll get to in just a little bit. So definitely that 3D design and visualization component is critical to what we're trying to achieve here. And then secondly, Urban has a really great revision model where you can, as a developer, as a planner using Urban, you can communicate back and forth with the public. If someone submits, for instance, plans in a 3D model that the setbacks aren't far enough in, an internal Urban user can leave a comment and kind of mark up those plans, right? Say, hey, I just performed a cross-cut analysis and we saw this problem. Shadow analysis doesn't fit within this zone, etc. And leave those comments, and then external users can also access the Urban environment and kind of have some interaction back and forth to make sure that the proposed building fits and meets all the requirements, which ultimately, excuse me, It's kind of what the plan review phase is all about. And so we see this tool set really tying into some existing permitting workflows that our customers have expressed and that we've worked with them on. And again, there's a lot of other functionality within Urban, shadow analysis, zoning regulations. You can create plans kind of from scratch instead of, and 10-year plans, 20-year plans, instead of just seeing what proposals look like within an existing plan. So it's really powerful, but those are the two that we'll kind of focus on today. Now, if you joined the exact same session, name at least, last conference in December 2019, this is a slide that the Urban team put together, and I want to take a little bit deeper dive into it today. And also, excitingly, this first line that we see at the top there, the automated creation of projects, that's what we'll show in the video ultimately, and what we've been working towards to kind of lay the foundation for this integration. For those of us maybe not as familiar with ArcGIS Urban, we have the workflow there on the left, to the left of that dotted orange line. And that's generally and typically how a new project comes in through the Urban interface. Someone, a planner, an architect, an urban user, maybe even a planner themselves, they create a new project. And the project is one of kind of the work activities within the urban environment. In this case, and for our purposes, it's really a new building, right? A proposed new building within anywhere within an organization. Now, once the new project is submitted, a version is created. That's an Urban term for kind of that first iteration of the model and the design that we can see within the interface. Then we have a generic markup. Okay, so this is really where that plan review is going to come in. I can take a look using the Urban toolset, determine if this proposal fits within the existing space, and start that communication process. Now, once the architect, for instance, receives that generic markup, they can go through either with their 3D modeling software or just even within a little bit more forms of an environment, can update some of that information. So maybe they redo their 3D model so that the setbacks now appear as far in as they need to, or they manually go in and set that setback value in a text form within the Urban environment. But they make that update or that revised version, and they submit that. And there can be a loop there, right, depending on how many times the plan gets rejected until it gets approved. But ultimately, once it's approved, Urban can go ahead and share that information with the public. So the public can kind of discuss, hey, is this something that we'd like to see in our downtown area? Does this industrial building within our industrial zone, is it something we're okay with, and can kind of interact and make sure that everybody's on board with the proposed building and the proposed space. And so as we first kind of started working with ArcGIS Urban, first of all, the term project really drew our eyes, and I'll give Pete Miller a shout out too, because Pete and I kind of started investigating with ArcGIS Urban a year and a half or 2 years ago. And that was the first thing that jumped out, right? We have projects in Cityworks PLL, projects in ArcGIS Urban, and then as we looked into it, it seemed like there was a definite connection with the review process of a permit application. So as we can see just to the right, we have a typical Cityworks PLL workflow. And maybe this new building permit application, that first box there, this can typically start through Cityworks Public Access. I'm a contractor or an architect, and I want to put up a new commercial building. I go to Cityworks Public Access, I indicate where I'd like to put this building, and then I fill out my application, right? I provide my contact information, any case data related to that, how tall is this building, what building type, etc. Also within that process, I can submit any documents. I can submit my CAD files, my PDFs, or ultimately what we'd like to do is be able to submit 3D models through public access and have them generate as the 3D model within ArcGIS Urban. So if these architects at these places have access to those 3D modeling capabilities, they can upload that and just really get the process started. Now at this point, that permit application hits the desk of internal staff. And I really don't want to boil this down too much because as we all know who have worked with PLL, there's so many different intricacies just depending on where we are. Where a building permit on one side of the country could look completely different than on the other side of the country, or even within a state, you can have totally different application processes. But really, generally speaking, application comes in, internal staff review the application to make sure everything's there. Make sure we have the contact information, all the documents. If any fees need to have been paid, can make sure we have those. Once the application is kind of complete, right, we see that we have everything, then we kick off a review process. Now, this review process can involve multiple different departments, maybe the building department, maybe planning and zoning, maybe the fire department, to make sure everything kind of lines up. And then after that, right, if any changes need to be made, if the zoning department looks and says, hey, this use or this building type isn't allowed within this location, they can resubmit until everything lines up. There's that permit revision stage there under the Cityworks PLL kind of flow until eventually the permit's approved, right? You can go ahead and build. And we send out the building permit. I get that, I put it on my door, whatever it is. I complete the construction, and then the inspections take place. It's that very general process. We see a lot of different ties with Urban, particularly at the permit review stage. So all those items that I really glossed over when I was talking about ArcGIS Urban, crosscut analysis, shadow analysis, 3D modeling so I can rotate and view this within the proposed space, building rules. A lot of that is already taking place within ArcGIS Urban. And what we identified is there's kind of a gap, right? So we indicate through a plan review task, right? If we think about a Cityworks workflow, they're composed of tasks. We maybe have a building review. And as a planner, I could get notified that I have an outstanding building review task waiting for me. But then my process for actually completing that review is totally separate. I get that email, I open up maybe ArcGIS Urban, maybe some different planning software, maybe I'm reviewing paper files. And then once I'm done, maybe I forget to go back to Cityworks and indicate that that review has been approved or denied. And so there's kind of an inefficiency going on there, where because I need to leave Cityworks, that permit review process can take maybe a little bit longer than we'd like it to. And we know this is important to our customers because a lot of the dashboards that we see, and Carl and I are working on a dashboard right now, for instance, just as kind of a template, a lot of the ArcGIS kind of hub information that we see, everyone wants to know how long the review process was. What's the average review process before a permit gets issued? Is it 45 days? Is it 30 days? What is it? Because they want to know how long they can expect to wait. With this proposed integration allowing the Urban tool set to be accessible kind of either through a button click or whatever it would be in PLL, we can link those two and we think really make efficiency gains as it relates to that review process. Now, before we kind of get to that point, this first step is we need to create the work activity within ArcGIS Urban as soon as an application for a building permit is created through public access. Because this update and launching ArcGIS Urban from Cityworks, none of it's really possible if we can't link the two from the beginning, right? We need that tie that I just created a Cityworks permit and at the same time create an ArcGIS Urban project. So that first line there, automated creation of projects, is what we're going to show in this video and what we're excited that we have working. And then along with that, right, optional submission of representation. If I have the capability to submit a 3D model, we eventually want to get to the point where I can upload that during the application process and it will render successfully within ArcGIS Urban. And then as the flows continue, we really want back and forth interaction. So I can go into Cityworks, for instance, maybe public access, and I can see in an embedded ArcGIS Urban window any comments that have taken place, any changes I need to make, and then I can quickly upload the revised 3D model. And taking it to the internal staff, maybe I'm looking at my plan review task within Cityworks, and I click a button, and there's an embedded Urban window so that I can complete the plan review, and then there's much less likelihood that I'll forget to go back to Cityworks and indicate that my plan review has been completed because they're right next to each other. And then have some comments that go back and forth, right, from both systems so that everything can kind of tie together and really improve that process. That's kind of the vision, right? And then I just want to emphasize that this first line is what we're going for first to kind of lay that foundation, and then we'll be able to, in future iterations as we continue to work, add some of this other stuff. Now here's kind of what I see as the payoff. Now this video, to those in the audience, I hope it's exciting. Maybe with an understanding of the the back end stuff, it'll be a little more exciting, and I'll explain that as we go through the video here. But to me, this is the culmination of a lot of work. So I need to give Brandon Whitney from our training staff a major shout out. I need to give Carl a major shout out. I need to give Mitch from our development team a major shout out, because we've all worked together really, really frequently these past couple of weeks to get to this point, and we're excited to show you what we have. So I'm going to go ahead and play this, and we're going to kind of walk through that flow, and we're going to start with Cityworks, right? Here we are in Cityworks Public Access. Let's imagine I'm an architect or a developer, and I want to apply for a permit to create a new building application. I'm going to come in, and as this is going to, I do just want to pause quickly, if I can find my mouse. With the API calls that we've put together, this is template specific. So if there's maybe some anxiety out there, well, hey, I just created a business license in PLL, but I don't want that to show up in ArcGIS Urban, we don't have to worry about that because we tied this to specific templates. So we'll go ahead and, with that in mind, use the template that we set this up against, which is a commercial new construction application. And so we'll hop in here, and we're going to provide some information that's necessary and required when creating a project in ArcGIS Urban. Now first, this description, we've matched that and mapped that to the project description within Urban. So I'll just name this something really basic, you know, say I'm putting up a new commercial building. Second required piece is we actually need to provide the location, right? I mean, everything within Cityworks, within Urban, it's all location specific. So I'm going to imagine that my proposed building is going to go up here against this parcel that I just selected. And this is, you know, maybe this is just the nerd in me, but this is where I think the first really exciting thing is happening. So the Urban data model and the Cityworks data model are slightly different. Urban is designed and constructed around building footprints and parcel footprints, but they use rings. They use geographic rings to kind of create this footprint and construct these buildings. And so we actually built a converter where we're selecting a parcel, and we're going to convert that into geographic rings so that it can render within the Urban instance. And so that's something that's happening behind the scenes, along with just passing along our general information here. So we have our parcel selected, and then again, from a Cityworks contractor perspective, this is all going to be exactly the same. I'll go through my application process, I'll complete my contact information. So I'm not even necessarily aware at this point that we're passing stuff to ArcGIS Urban, which I think is a good thing, right? We want this to look and feel familiar in both instances. We want the public access side to look familiar and the Urban side to look familiar, so that as these roll out, everyone feels comfortable. So our case data, exactly the same too, right? I enter in my square footage, my estimated start date, and I do want us to pay attention to our start date too, because we're going to write that to our Urban project. We have a start date of yesterday, and we also have some values that we're populating here too. And then we'll just continue to move forward. We can provide any contractor information if we'd like. And then we can provide our related documents, right? So as we kind of, oops, did I pause this on accident? Nope, still going. Let's see. There we go. And then so, you know, select my contractors, and here within our related documents section, once we get to this point with the integration, this would be where users could upload their 3D models. And we can work with the Urban team to make sure the models are supported, and then kind of complete a similar process of converting the models to make sure everything lines up and looks good in ArcGIS Urban. And then again, if I want to pay fees or bypass those, I can go ahead and do that. Now here's where everything kind of kicks off. We actually put a webhook into this Cityworks site, and as soon as I click submit, it's built off of the case create. So once I create this case, we're firing webhooks to ArcGIS Urban, and we're actually creating the project right now. But it's really not that simple, because first we're creating the Urban data model. So we needed the data set ID, because each project kind of ties individually to a data set. And we create that, and then we put in a slight pause, and then we create the project referencing that data set ID. So all that just happened behind the scenes, right? And I just want to draw our eyes to a couple of things. We have 515 North Coltrane Road. It's a new commercial building. It was created yesterday, and it expires on June 30th. So I'm going to jump into ArcGIS Urban here, and we can see an earlier test that we created, and then just like that, there's our new commercial building. So we automatically created this project, right? We can see the shape there. It kind of matches that close to rectangular shape that we created, or that we specified within public access. And we've brought that information over. We brought over our case description, we brought over our location, and we brought over our dates, right? It was created today, it expires June 30th of next year. So all that communication has taken place, and we've automatically created this project within ArcGIS Urban. So if we return to this slide here, I'm pretty excited that we've completed this first step, this automated creation of projects. And then now we'll be able to build from that, where we can have that communication back and forth. We can maybe create some of those embedded ArcGIS Urban windows to really expedite the review process and allow users to access the Cityworks toolset to indicate how far along the permit is progressing, while also accessing the ArcGIS Urban toolset to actually complete some of those reviews, linking the systems together in a way that we think is going to really make things a lot more efficient. And we've had some, preliminary conversations with a few of our customers who are interested in this functionality. And whoops, I forgot to put my contact info in there. But we can reach out with that stuff after the fact. But we'd love to talk with you all if you're interested, see maybe what else you'd like to see, what else is possible within the integration. And if this is something that you'd be interested in pursuing, and this is a great time to get involved because it's still early enough that we can, kind of account for that as we move forward and really think this is going to help with efficiency gains. So I think I heard maybe I heard questions come in. I don't know. It could have been a different chat that I have going on, but I hope there's some questions so that we can talk about this. And if we don't have questions now, obviously feel free to reach out. But I think this would be a good time, Gabrielle, if there were any questions that we can kind of address those.
I think you have them all so enthralled in this exciting part of it that they forgot to add any questions on the question section. So we're going to give them a couple minutes to get over the amazingness of it all and see if we can get any. And I'm very excited about it personally. I think this is going to be really cool. I think the idea of being able to have the two of them together and be able to now communicate at that level with the contractors, I think it's just going to revolutionize the process and the way that planning deals with those contractors on a day-to-day basis. So I'm excited about it myself.
Yeah, I am too. I just think they're two really great tool sets that up until now have kind of been siloed. And as we continue to work through this, the form side, right, that I think Cityworks handles really well, that workflow process of what all goes into approving a building application, and then the planning analysis tool set offered by ArcGIS Urban, I think it's a natural fit. And I think, the Urban team has been really great to work with. And I did also want to give a shout out to NearMap too. This was kind of down to the wire. We've been working with the Urban team and the NearMap teams to try to get the 3D mesh in place so that we could see NearMap. So I'm going to get to the Urban instance here. And if we imagine here that instead of kind of this relatively blasé base map, we actually see the NearMap information, that's really going to complete the solution. So we can identify just visually, right, where we are, the surrounding area, and we can use that and incorporate it within our plan review processes instead of, again, kind of this just blasé plan. But we'll upload we'll get some screenshots of that too once we can kind of work through the hurdles we've been having. And if anyone's interested in seeing NearMap within this proposal, we'll gladly communicate that with them as well.
We do have a question right now, Dan. So do you have any feel for how this will fit in with existing plan review processes? Will the Urban reviewer of the overall structure proceed the detailed building plan reviews?
Yeah, I think that's going to be kind of site dependent, right? So that's something that the customers we've worked with, if they're interested and using Urban right now, they've kind of involved Urban within that plan review process. Whereas maybe some of our existing customers or those interested have their own procedures right now. It would be something that I think we could work with the Urban team just to identify if using Urban in general fits for them. But the customers we have worked with, it's definitely part of the process where they go into an application, in a lot of cases ArcGIS Urban, review that building, and then kind of go back to Cityworks and indicate if it's approved or not.
Yeah, I think as planners start to use that tool more for their plans and to review them, I think that's where that connection will happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely can continue this discussion with the client to see what else we could do to help it out, to help that process be a lot more integrated and to make it easier on the planner side. But I think that will be where a lot of the changes will occur, right? How the planners are using the tools to do their process, right? They're going to start using Urban instead of or along with.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the exciting pieces is even if this just gets some members in the audience to explore the possibilities of ArcGIS Urban, I think that link between our two systems can kind of maybe provide a little bit of curiosity, right? Hey, let's check this out. It might be something that we can use instead of our paper plan reviews that maybe take up a little bit of time. And we all know how difficult change management is, so it would obviously be a big consideration. But I think with the tool set offered by ArcGIS Urban, it can really improve that review process and just kind of help move things forward. Another thing that was brought up last conference, I believe there was a question of, hey, well, this all sounds great, but we're not even close to having 3D modeling capabilities yet, right? Our architects, our contractors, they're not submitting 3D models, they're submitting CAD files, whatever it is. And I hope that that's not intimidating based on what we showed, because exactly what we saw here, there's no 3D models involved. So you can still utilize the Urban interface and kind of manually create data models. So you don't have maybe the super fancy tall skyscraper building model, but you can create kind of some of those block buildings. If I go back here to these Urban slides, you can create stuff like this just directly from ArcGIS Urban. And it's something that we're exploring as we create projects to automatically create those buildings. So you can still access those tools even without the 3D models that maybe aren't quite available yet at some of these organizations.
Yeah, good point. Here we have another question for you. Any idea on when Esri is going to make Urban available enterprise portal rather than only AGOL? Or, you know,
that is a good question.
And oh, sorry, Dan.
No, I didn't know if there was more to it, but just that first part even. Yeah, go ahead, Gabriel.
Can you do this if you're using Urban in ArcGIS Online, but portal for Cityworks mapping, etc.?
That I'll have to follow up with the Urban team on, especially the timing component of it, when Urban will be available more enterprise wide, I suppose. And also some considerations of the mapping differences, right? If you're using AGOL for Cityworks versus the enterprise application to access ArcGIS Urban, just kind of seeing how we could tie those together. That's a really good conversation. And we've had some of those with Brooks Patrick at the Urban team, just to try to figure out how we could make those things line up, including maybe some licensing changes that they'd be interested in pursuing from an Esri perspective, and maybe, you know, exposing some public licenses that might help kind of bridge that gap. So we're definitely having those conversations, but I can follow up once I have some more maybe timeline information on that.
Okay, we'll continue discussing this with the client as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
We have another question for you. Great work. How might you handle an assessment of zoning in GIS Urban, perhaps before taking application into building permit process in Cityworks? Would you do this Cityworks or Urban?
That's an interesting use case that we haven't really gotten to yet, but I'd for sure be interested in discussing that with the customer so we can just kind of pick brains and see what might make sense, because I think ultimately what we want to do is just whichever application makes the most sense for the customer, have that available. So if it's something that they'd rather handle in Cityworks with a potential integration, yeah, absolutely stay in Cityworks. If it's something that they'd want to pursue within ArcGIS Urban, maybe we pass along some of that permit information and have it go that way. But yeah, I'd like to follow up with them just to get a little bit more granular as to what they're looking for, because I think that could be really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's part of the important thing is the more we talk to clients as to the actual need, the more that we can make the process fit their requirements a lot better. So these are great questions to pursue and find out more information for sure.
Yeah.
And looks like that is all the questions, which is great because we are done with our time. So thank you so much, Dan, Carl. Thank you for being here today. Thanks to all of you who were part of this presentation. I hope it was a good introduction to what we can do with ArcGIS Urban. Please, if you think of anything else, don't hesitate to let us know. It's you can send us a message to Dan or Carl or myself, any of us, and we'll be happy to pursue this. For the questions that did come in, we will definitely pursue them and move forward with that. Thank you so much for your time, and please enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you so much, Dan and Carl. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.